NFL makes $9 billion a year, but how much is the life of a player worth to the league? Every time a player steps out on the field, millions of dollars are on the line. But it is not the National Football League's money, it is that player's income. If that player is involved in a violent collision on the field, he could potentially do one of two things: skyrocket to stardom as one of the most brutal players in the NFL, or be sent spiraling to the sidelines with a permanent injury. If he is sidelined, that could be a season or career-ending injury. If he ends up with this career-ending injury, he can easily be replaced by a younger, potentially fitter, faster, better player. If this player loses his position, it can only mean one thing: next season, no contract. Next season, no income. Because of this, many players feel pressured to continue to play even after sustaining serious concussions and injuries. This sad truth is personified in the example of player Josh Cribbs, who played for the Cleveland Browns. He shared his story of a violent collision that he was involved in on the field. He collapsed on the field with a violent and severe concussion and was ushered off to the sidelines by the Browns team trainer. All he had to do to return to play was pass the NFL's foolishly simple return to play protocol. All he had to do was name the team that the Cleveland Browns were currently playing. But Cribbs could not do it. He stuttered and stalled for several minutes, attempting to name the other team, but didn't know. He only figured it out when he turned to the field and saw the opposing team's uniform. He correctly identified the Denver Broncos and returned to the game. Cribbs' experience is not unique. Rather, his sad story is shared by every player who ever suits up in an NFL uniform and takes to the field and sustains these severe concussions. While NFL officials sit on the sidelines and in their cozy box seats, never lifting a finger, these players sustain violent injuries every day that lead to permanent brain damage later in life. It is time for the NFL to stop prioritizing its industry and start protecting player health. Since the 1990s, the National Football League has been pressured by fans and retired players to focus its resources on concussion awareness. However, the NFL has continued to perpetuate the myth that there is no connection between professional football and concussions and future brain damage. In 1994, the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee was started by the NFL with one purpose: to research the long-term effects of concussions in NFL players. However, this committee published 13 peer-reviewed studies that all reached the same conclusion: there is no connection between brain injuries later in life and playing in the NFL. However, a New York Times study later found that all 13 of these studies were false. These studies omitted nearly 100 cases of concussions, which accounted for nearly 10% of the data set. With this 10% missing, the data was skewed in favor of the NFL. Even though the National Football League claimed that every team was mandated to participate in the survey and every player who sustained an injury had to be included in the study, team doctors, including Dr. Elliot Pellman, the lead researcher for the committee's study, and team doctor for the Jets, omitted the most severe cases of concussions that players sustained. The most shocking omission was that of the Dallas Cowboys, who refrained from submitting 6 seasons' worth of concussion data. With these omissions, the NFL was able to perpetuate its myth that there is no connection between concussions and future brain damage. The NFL even used these faulty studies to refute proven studies, especially that by Dr. Omalu in 2005, who in 2005 identified the first case of CTE in a National Football League player, and CTE is a degenerative brain disorder caused by repeated head-on collisions. Even though the mild traumatic brain injury produced these studies, they all reached the same faulty conclusion: there is no connection between head injuries and the NFL. The NFL has continued to skew its data, and this trend continues till today. In 2016, the NFL made slight progress by finally admitting at a congressional hearing that there could potentially be a connection between CTE, the degenerative brain disease, and repeated head-on collisions that football players face on a daily basis. The league then committed $100 million to scientific research studying concussions. However, the first study funded by the league does not even focus on football players. Rather, it is studying horse jockeys in Europe to figure out why these horse jockeys do not have the degenerative effects of CTE later in life, even though they sustain concussions. Many fear that this research will reach the same conclusion that the NFL has been perpetuating for years, that there is no connection between CTE and repeated head-on collisions in the NFL, simply because the study does not even focus on football players, and jockeys have been proven not to suffer from CTE. And also, the lead researchers on the study are 2 European scientists who do not even believe in CTE, calling it hoo-ha and carry on. The NFL has made strides by admitting that CTE does exist. However, with these studies, it could potentially revert to its old ways of perpetuating the myth that the league does not have a concussion problem. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with one question. How much is a player's life worth to the NFL? Is it worth the nearly $1 billion, a mere fraction of the National Football League's revenue that has to be doled out to injured players and their families following a recent lawsuit that was filed about traumatic brain injuries? Is it worth the nearly $100 million that the NFL has claimed it will commit to scientific research on concussions, even though 40% of this money has been given to a study by doctors who do not even believe in CTE? Or is it worth an unlimited commitment and investment into a sound, legitimate research? Is it worth changing the rules and quite possibly the game if it means that players will have a better quality of life? Is football really worth someone's future? It is, after all, only just a game. Thank you.